Back to Double Fries No Slaw. Wednesday night, TJ Pittenger, Richie Barnes, and for the first time in a while, we're on time. So take that to the haters that we don't show up on time for. How about this? Richie's sick. Richie's coming in on his sick day. What a guy. How you feeling, man?
It's gonna be my flu game. I'm here. Flu pod. Showing up after a loss to a rival, but I'm not gonna let that hold me back.
The Canes fans in your mentions got to you? Is that what? Did you stay up all night arguing with people? Is that how you got sick?
Oh no, I literally had hundreds of notifications. I did not reply to a single one.
Big Noel tweeted, my favorite follow on Twitter. Aaron might be second, but Big Noel tweeted something like, "Oh, it was the Breaking Bad gif, the video. Like he can't keep getting away with this." And it said like all the Miami fans that have been in my mentions since Saturday night, begging me to respond to them, which is the best way to do it. Listen, I will tell you, Miami fans which I know we get some in here in the comments. So will probably be some tonight. Shout them out, but Miami fans on Twitter are so much different than Miami fans on YouTube. So like the Miami fans, and there is some blend or some crossover, but the Miami fans on YouTube, the age demographic skews a little bit differently. Obviously, Twitter's a much younger crowd. People that haven't lived through all of the ups and downs of Miami football. The people on YouTube are actually usually pretty respectful, pretty chill. They'll give you a little crap here and there, but they want to see the rivalry be great. Whereas on Twitter, it's a different. Everybody lives a different persona, right? So
I think people that are your age and my age, I'm a little older than you, obviously. They understand that going back to the 80s and 90s, Florida State Miami was always a heated rivalry, but always one of the most respected ones. Like Florida State fans hate the Gators. But they respect Miami and what they've done. Obviously, they haven't done anything in a very long time. But for me, growing up in that era in the late 80s, early 90s, it's always been a certain level of respect, but you still want to see them lose every week. But that's kind of the difference between the two rivalries.
Yeah, without a doubt. So if you're a Miami fan that's in Richie's mentions at this point,
I'm not replying.
Yeah, let him have a little break because he's sick. All right, give him
Nick Saban gif. Stop asking.
Give Richie a little slack this week because he sounds terrible. So, other than that, man, how's your week been?
Been pretty good. I stayed home for work yesterday. My boss saw me first thing this morning. He's like, "Dude, you look terrible. You need to go home." So I've been in bed pretty much for the past 48 hours or so, just watching Lifetime movies with my wife, which I, guilty pleasure. I actually love Lifetime movies. They're so bad that they're good. How about you?
The week's been good. I can't say what, but I got good news at some point this week, which made the week a lot better. And then just been busy. The kids are on fall break the next few days, so that's not very fun. But so they'll be home. So this is kind of the end of my week, the end of my work week. And then, starts kind of a new work week tomorrow with them being home for they're home Thursday, Friday, and Monday too. Like, what is fall? Like, what is this? But whatever, they get a few days off. Just looking forward to this weekend's game. Looking forward to seeing if FSU can bounce back. We'll talk a little bit about Pitt here in a little bit, but yeah, overall, been a pretty good week. No complaints. And shout out to you for trying to go into work when you're sick. Listen, I'm the biggest baby in the world. I try not to do anything when I'm sick. That's not true. During the playoff, I had the flu. I tested positive for the flu and still made some content, made videos and stuff while everything was going on in the college football playoff. But shout out to people that work in a hospital and go in when they're sick, because that's a different level of psycho. But shout out you, Richie. Double Fries No Slaw brought to you by Guthrie's. You can visit all three of their locations: 1818 West Tennessee, 2550 North Monroe, and 2870 Appalachia Parkway. Appreciate Guthrie's, as always, for their support. If you are in or around Tallahassee for the game this weekend, make sure that you do stop by. Listen, I'll give some other love here in just a moment as well. But somebody asked me about a tailgate this weekend, and we're not doing one because I'm not in town. I need a break. I've gone to the first 5 games. I need a break from going out of town every single weekend. But our new partners over at Tallahassee Ford, which we'll tell you more about later, they do a tailgate over in lot 14. You just look for the big Ford stuff that they've got out everywhere. Tell them we sent you by. They'll have food, drinks, games. You can literally, they had stuff out there for the Bama game where you could literally win money. I don't know if you can win a car or not, but see how gracious they get. But go check them out if you're around. Richie, I don't know how much you want to talk about Miami or if you want to just move past that, but I think we can talk big picture before we get into the specific matchup here. This game, we said the Virginia game was the most important, and I don't really back off of that because if you'd have won that, you'd be playing with a little bit of house money right now. You'd probably still be ranked up somewhere around the top 10. I don't think they would have dropped you very much for losing to Miami by 6, though that result is maybe a little bit misleading. But this Pitt game becomes incredibly important. Just from a very macro perspective, I don't know if I'm sure you saw the Jeff Kramer clip that has been kind of running around. If Florida State was to lose this one, right? Norvell's bought back favor. He's bought back some of the fan base. I know that some of that's gone after the last 2 weeks, but man, if they were to lose this one, it just feels like you just wasted the most massive opportunity ever. And they're going to win more games this year. I think they beat Wake and Stanford. I think they beat Virginia Tech. They've got a great chance against NC State. Clemson and Florida are still dumpster fires, despite what they both did last weekend. So you've got a chance to win a lot more games. This, to me, I don't want to say it's more important, less important than Virginia. I don't know how much that matters now. But at this moment, this is the most important game on the schedule. And it's not just because it's the next one, because if you played Wake right now and then Pittsburgh next, I'd still just say it's Pittsburgh because they are a capable team. But this is a game that Florida State just, in no world can Mike Norvell afford to lose this game. I don't think he gets fired after the game or anything like that. But in no world can Florida State afford to lose this one.
No, it is, it's, you kind of touched on it. The cliche, the most important game is the next game. But in reality, that is the truth right now heading into Pittsburgh week. And I think more so for Mike Norvell than for Florida State as a program. Because I think, Florida State as a program is going to be fine. I think we talked about it, an outside, very, very outside shot at making the college football playoff. Getting to Charlotte would take a lot of things rolling in your favor at this point. So I don't see that happening either. But for Mike Norvell, he's probably in his head right now thinking, I cannot let my team lose this game. And seeing how he approaches that and how he handles that pressure, because there is a ton of pressure on him. I'm sure several of the brass at Florida State, the high dollar boosters, our athletic director, everyone in between, there's a lot of talk right now about Mike Norvell and saying, what can we do with him in the future? He's still owed a lot of money. I agree with you. Even if they got blown out Saturday, he's not losing his job this week. But this week's game could cause him to lose his job.
Yeah, it feels like because of what's ahead, right? And you look at Wake and Stanford and you think you're going to be a pretty big favorite in both those games. Those are two pretty bad programs. You look ahead and you say, dude, if you win this one, it would take a monumental collapse to lose one of those two. So you really should be 6-2 going into November, right? That is a very realistic thing. And if you can get to 6-2 going into November, I think you're in really, really good shape.
You're top 15 again.
I guess that last game is November. I guess the Wake game is. Am I right about that? Is that November 1st? So,
pull it up right now.
FSU Wake 2025. Maybe if you knew the schedule, that is November 1st. But on November 1st, you should be 6-2, and I think that would be huge. To look at where you're at right now, you were 3-0. You felt good. You dropped a couple in the middle. But you've got a great chance over these next 3 games, with Pitt being absolutely the most difficult of the 3, to really kind of have some feel-good vibes. Does it fix everything? Does it fix the recruiting issues that we've talked about? Does it fix losing a couple of games back-to-back? No, it doesn't fix any of that. But if you can get back to a point where you're 6-2 and you're probably pretty close to that top 15-ish range, you have the month of November to impact what kind of season we think this ends up being. If Virginia stays ranked, if Miami stays in the top 5, you probably will even forgive those losses if you take care of business up to and then in November. So to me, this game is huge. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And I also wonder, and we see it all the time, Richie, teams bouncing back from an emotional loss. And I think it was easy to get up for Alabama. I think it was easy to get up for Miami. I wonder how the team does playing a noon kickoff against a team like Pitt that there's no rivalry there. There's no animosity there. There's no hatred there. It's a boring opponent. Let's just be honest. Like I'm not. That's not disrespectful. It's not disrespectful
about Dan Marino all week. I don't care.
I just don't.
Twitter.
I don't think there's anything like you have to find your own motivation for this game if you're a Florida State football player, because there's nothing there. I mean, I guess it is on ESPN. I mean, great. But there's nothing about this game that is motivating. You've just lost two heartbreakers, one that you had a chance in, one that was against a rival. And all the good vibes from earlier are gone. You don't have any of that carrying you. You're not coming back home to play. You've already been at home. You're playing at noon. I'd imagine it's a pretty good crowd, but it won't be the crowd it was last game. Right? Like I don't know if it has already sold out or not, but yeah, I mean, you'll have to figure it out yourself. And I'll tell you who will be motivated to play in this game is Pitt, because anytime you play one of the premier brands in your conference, no matter what conference you're in, when you play the Alabamas and the Ohio States and the Georgias and the USCs and the Michigans and all these teams, when you have a chance to take out the big guy, you're going to try and do it. And so I would hope that whatever Florida State can do to conjure up that motivation, whatever Mike Norvell can do, or the coaching staff or the players internally on themselves, Tommy, whomever, hopefully they can figure that out, because they're going to need it this weekend, because Pitt will not play down in this game. Like, Narduzzi is incredibly tough. He coaches incredibly tough, and they will need to bring it, or else they will be sitting at 3-3 the time we do this show on Sunday.
Yeah, and I think a good example is, obviously I'm a big college basketball fan as well. And I think back to my senior year at Florida State when we had a really good basketball team. And it was just one of those rare years at the time where North Carolina was complete trash. But me and my roommate literally left at 6 a.m. from Tallahassee to drive up to Chapel Hill, skipped class all day, went to the game and came back because we knew we were going to win that game. Because North Carolina, they had checked out at this point in the season. And Florida State, not having any history in basketball for the most part, outside of a 1972 loss in the championship game, it was North Carolina. And when you see that logo, and Florida State's logo holds that weight when it comes to the college football gridiron, it's different. You don't care if they're ranked or not. If you see blood in the water, you go for it, because how many chances are you going to get to beat a team like Florida State when you're Pitt? And Pitt has a very rich history. They have more national titles than Miami does, but all those were 60, 70 years ago. This is a game that, a lot of players that are on Pitt's roster, if Mike Norvell had called them up as a high school recruit, or even, if they had entered the portal, they would absolutely 10 out of 10 times pick to play at Florida State over Pitt. So it is a game that they will be ready for. And if you come out, and you let them jump up on you early, 14-3 or something like that, you're going to be in very real trouble. So this is a game. I'm calling this the Mike Norvell game. Like, can you get your team ready for this game? Can you get your coaching staff ready for this game? You were on such a high to open the season after beating Alabama. And then the last 2 weeks happened. If you had won one of the last two games, I think it's a slightly different story. But again, you still have an outside chance to get to the college football playoff, and that completely goes away with a loss. And that message needs to be hammered home. So
this is a good question. Wesley's in here all the time, so I am going to shout out Wesley Todd here. Yo, TJ and Richie. Now that we're 5 games in, give me your over-under on 8.5 wins this year. I'm taking the over, especially after a win against Pitt. Go Noles. All right, I'll go first here. If we beat Pitt, which I'm going to pick us to beat Pitt. I know that might not hold weight with some people after me picking Virginia, us to beat Virginia and Miami, but I am going to pick us to beat Pitt. Spoiler alert. If we get to 4-2, I think that gets you to 6-2. Do you think they can win 3 of the 4 games? I mean, that's what it would come down to, Richie. Do you think they can win 3 of the 4? I'll take the over right now. Maybe I'm still drinking too much Kool-Aid from that Bama game. Maybe I haven't come down off the mountaintop of the Bama game in more ways than one. But right now, I don't know if that's the smart money or not. But right now, I'll take the over of 8.5. What you got, Richie?
All right, so we got Pitt this week. Despite us, being very transparent that we do think this will be a tough game. You're a 10.5-point favorite. They're at home, no excuse to lose it.
ESPN says 77%, right? I mean, no excuses. You're right.
At Stanford, that's a game that typically I'd be a little weary of it because you look at the NFL when an East Coast team goes to the West Coast, but that's at 10:30 p.m. kick, 7:30 Eastern time. I don't think that, as long as they're not jet lagged, and I've noticed this, TJ, you probably have as well. Jet lag doesn't really become a thing until you get into like your 30s. Because I used to fly across the country when I was in my 20s and think nothing of it. Now it does. It is a very, very real thing. Wake should be a win. At Clemson will be tough because that crowd will be raucous. So even if Clemson drops another game or two, they're going to be ready for Florida State. So that's a tough one. I think the key here, I think you beat Florida because I think Billy's done. I know he saved his job for another week after a really nice win against Texas. So I don't want to take anything away from him there. You got to split at Clemson and at NC State. Do that, and I think you get to 9-3. I'll take the over.
I'm going over.
Yep.
Riding the positive. We're both riding the positivity. I was a little afraid that you were going to go under. I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter, but
it's a crap schedule. Let's be honest.
It really is. That's part of the thing here with Norvell and the schedule and the roster and everything else. Like the schedule's not very tough. Virginia might end up being better than we thought, but Florida and Bama are worse, and Clemson's worse, right? Miami's about a little bit better than we thought. So, yeah, I never struggled with jet lag. I didn't struggle with it going to Dublin. I didn't struggle with it going to the West Coast. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm built a little differently, I guess. But know what the kids say. All right, let me quickly give Sleeper some love. Listen, there are no picks up on the Sleeper app right now, but if you use our code DFNS, you get 100% match up to $100. You also, in the month of October, get a free $20 entry. So if you've been waiting to deposit, if you've been waiting to get on the Sleeper app, you don't have to wait anymore. If you've just been cheap, $20 for free. Use our code DFNS on the Sleeper app. Go get that done today. I'll do a video at some point with the more or less from this week's game since they're not live yet. But go check out the Sleeper app. We don't have any. Harlan sent me the updates. Harlan went 2 of 6. Richie and I went 4 of 6. But we have nothing to pick this week because they're not live yet. So I'll do that at some point later in the week. Richie, let's talk about Pitt a little bit. You've got their stats up. I'll let you roll for a sec.
Yeah, so far, let me go back to, there we go. So, Bill Conley, I've always been a huge fan of him. And, it's honestly funny how close this matchup could potentially be. I'm looking at the SB Plus right now. We'll start there. Florida State is number 27 in the country at 3-2. Pitt is number 30 at 3-2. Florida State has the number 28 offense, number 32 defense, number 52 special teams. So really well balanced for the most part. Pitt has the 32nd offense, the 38th defense, and 15th best special teams. So honestly, when you look at advanced metrics, I think it's one of those games where it should be really close on paper. It makes you wonder about that Vegas spread. And just looking at who they played so far, obviously they blew out Duquesne, a terrible team who Florida State played a year ago or 2 years ago, whenever that was. They handled Central Michigan, lost the backyard brawl to West Virginia. I believe that was in overtime. Louisville beat by a touchdown, and then they blew out a really bad BC team at home. So, just looking at their schedule so far, it's hard to get a read on them based on that. Just because, they've played the teams that they're comparable to, they played them very close. That makes me think this will be a close game. Spoiler for betting on this game, a 10.5-point spread, I'm leaning one way right now. Looking at Eli Holstein, he's not super accurate, 62.7% completion rate, 11 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. I think that's something that you could probably, take advantage of. And they've had 2 other quarterbacks throw the ball 20 plus times. Again, they played Duquesne.
Yeah, Eli's been benched just for that. The other kid is now the quarterback, which he lit it up last week.
Yeah,
which makes you super worried coming into this one.
Just looking again at their stats, they come at you with a ton of running backs, right? They have 4 with 24 plus carries on the season. Their leader right now is Jules Goff, 45 carries, 175 yards, only 3.9 a carry. They do have what looks like to be more of a home run threat, so to speak, in Desmond Reed, who's averaging 5.9. And then in the passing attack, they have, I don't know. I haven't followed Pitt. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I have, but they have Bryce Yates, who's averaging 27.5 yards a catch, only on 6 catches so far this year. So not overly concerned about that. But again, especially looking at the SP Plus, they do seem to be a very balanced team. And you're going to have to be good. It's not like you're playing a really bad defense where you can just, win a shootout. I think this will be a 4-quarter ball game. I really do.
Yeah. The point about Holstein, that does worry me quite a bit. Now, I will say, in some of the results, like 31 points for West Virginia, although that came in overtime, West Virginia has been absolutely terrible since then. Now, that is a rivalry game, so maybe it makes sense that would be a little bit closer. They did beat the heck out of Boston College, who I think is, up there with Stanford and UNC for the worst teams in the ACC. Louisville, a team that they played close. Again, you're getting into kind of the transitive property here, but they lost to Louisville by a touchdown. Louisville lost to Virginia, who you played close in overtime. That game was in overtime too. So a team that can certainly play up. Now, again, I think you're a favorite against Louisville. You're a favorite if you play Virginia again right now, even if it's on the road. You're a favorite if you play. Obviously Pitt right now you are, and then I think you're a favorite against really any team that Pitt has played so far. If Florida State had Pitt's schedule, I think they'd be 5-0, right? Like, I think that's, I don't think that's too crazy to think about. It's a team that you are more talented than. You mentioned the quarterback, the backup coming in here. Is it Heinschnitzel? I don't know how to say this. Maybe I'll learn on Saturday when he. Never mind. I'm not going to say it. That was going to be super negative. But in his last game, absolutely crushed against BC. 323 yards. He went 30 for 41. That's a 73% completion percentage. He was only sacked twice, but he had 4 touchdowns and no picks. And wasn't just like Dyson, wasn't just like throwing bombs all day. His longest completion was 25 yards. And so he absolutely is a guy that will take what the defense gives him. He ran the ball 10 times for 28 yards. So I don't think you have to worry about a ton there on the ground. 2 of those sacks, but he's not like going to burn you real long on a scramble, or it's not who was the kid, Morris from Virginia. But just his efficiency is a little bit worrying. And if this defense continues to, last week they bowed up a little bit in the second half. Miami certainly took their foot off the gas. But if this defense can't pull it together, I worry about the underneath stuff. I worry about the same way. Both Virginia and, really even go back to Alabama. They just had like 5 drops in that game. But really the way that Virginia and Miami were able to just very easily complete stuff underneath. Miami's athletes were just good enough to where they'd complete something underneath and take it another 25, 30 yards for a touchdown. I don't know that Pitt has the same style of athlete, but if Florida State can't limit some of that and play underneath a little bit and not worry so much about getting beat deep, which I know that is the style of defense that we are playing right now, they've got to be a little more aggressive defensively. I think you've got to keep Pitt under 24. I would feel really good if Florida State kept Pitt under 24, because I think they'll score more than that. Most of Pitt's opponents this year have cleared that number. In fact, I could be wrong on this, haven't all of their real opponents cleared that number? I guess they've only played 2 in West Virginia and
BC. I wouldn't call a real opponent.
Yeah, like BC's closer to Central Michigan and Duquesne than they are to West Virginia and Louisville. But if you can hold them there, but look at their totals, man. Against Duquesne, 61. I know that's a bad team. Central Michigan is an FBS team. They put up 45. West Virginia, they only got to 24. Louisville, 27. Boston College, 48. I mean, there's a clear dividing line. When they score over 28, they win. When they score under 28, they lose. Yeah. So if you can keep them at or around that number defensively, then I feel like you're in really good shape. Obviously, Florida State has to fix their turnover problems, and they've had way too many the last 2 weeks. I don't really care about the turnovers that have happened in the two garbage games, and then they were really clean against Alabama minus the muff punt. But that has Tommy has to take what is given to him. And I do think Florida State also has a big time advantage in the trenches, something they didn't really have against Miami. They should be able to protect him a little bit better. And if he can get through a couple of progressions or just take off and run, because Pitt just doesn't have the same level of athlete, I would imagine that we can take care of the ball a little bit better. But that'll be important. This team is going to be motivated to come in and beat you, and you can't give them something early that lets them stick around. Richie mentioned it being a 4-quarter game. It very well may be, but it could also be over a lot earlier than that. If Florida State plays well, like they did really in the second quarter, the fourth quarter offensively against Virginia, if they play like they did for the last 3 quarters against Bama, they could put this game away by the start of the fourth quarter or somewhere midway through the third. And if the defense can continue to build on that, you make them pretty one-dimensional, I think you'll be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see a much different looking defense this week than you saw against Miami last week. Tony White sold out to stop the run last week, and that's what really opened up some of those screens and underneath stuff that Miami really capitalized on. And Carson Beck is a good enough college quarterback. He's very good. I think he's the leading candidate for the Heisman if you're looking at Vegas right now. I think the defense is going to look much different. I think they're going to feel more confident. Tony White will feel more confident in allowing his front players to really kind of control that line of scrimmage and, spread the defense out a little bit more, because we were loading the box like crazy against Miami. And to Tony White's credit, it worked. You just got burnt on a few big plays. But I think that's a big deal if Pitt is looking at Miami game tape as a recipe to how to beat Florida State, I think they're making a mistake. They probably want to look at the Virginia tape. And these are coaches that are paid millions of dollars. They're looking at all the tape. So that's, obviously worth noting. But yeah, I think Florida State, you have the better players. I think Florida State has the better coaching. I know I might get hammered on that because there's a lot, even Florida State fans who are probably done with Norvell at this point. I'm not yet. But I think you're going to see a completely different approach to the defense Saturday afternoon. And then offensively, I just think this is the perfect team for a guy like Gus Malzahn to call a game against. He is going to dial up anything and everything. I don't think they're going to be nearly as disciplined. That's one thing that honestly impressed the heck out of me with Miami is how disciplined they were. They were not falling for any of that eye candy that Malzahn typically dials up. I think Pitt will be falling for some of that, and you are going to see a jet sweep go for like 50 yards at one point.
What does worry me some, and I'm trying to manifest positive things at this point in the season after the last 2 weeks. What does worry me a little bit is their strength is what I'm probably most worried about, and that is throwing the ball. I think we could shut down their run. And you look at what they've done. Against Louisville, they had 80 yards rushing, and against West Virginia, they had 40-something yards rushing? I had that pulled up just a second ago. No, against West Virginia, they did pretty well. Against, let's see, West Virginia.
I'll say this. The leading rusher against West Virginia had 37 yards. The leading rusher against Louisville had 36 yards.
Yeah, their leading rusher against West Virginia, or their rushing total against West Virginia was 46 yards. Now, there were a few sacks counted into that. They'd have been around 70, if not for the sack yardage. So, I don't know how, still, they've run for 150 yards against the two teams that are somewhat quality. Not that I would put West Virginia as a super quality team at this moment, but I do think we'll limit their run and keep them pretty one-dimensional. If we don't, then that's a problem. But man, it does worry me that kid came in and threw for over 300 yards last week. I know it was against BC. I know we have better athletes. I know he'll be on the road this week in Doak Campbell, which should be a little tougher place to play, even with it being a noon kick. but their strength does worry me just a tad, right? And that's where I think you need your offense. I think you need Tommy in your offense to really kind of get after things, to not let that be an issue.
Yeah, and to that point, again, the transitive theory isn't really relevant, but just looking at they beat Fordham, talking about BC, but since then, Michigan State hung 42. Stanford, of all teams, put 30 up on them. Cal, another bad team, put 28 up on them. And as you said, Pitt put 48 up on them. All four of those games are losses. There's a reason that BC is probably the worst team in the ACC. So I don't want to put too much stock into that. And again, I think to your point, we were talking about it at the top of the show, how Pitt is going to be ready to play, right? What an opportunity to come into Doak Campbell Stadium and try and upset a Florida State team who beat Alabama earlier this year. However, too many times you see teams that, sometimes it works out. Jimbo Fisher has always said it best. He's like, you cannot let your emotions get too high because then you start making mistakes. Does Pitt's emotions get too high? And I think for some of these players, it will, especially a guy that came into the season as a backup quarterback, and now is getting his first huge start on the road against what I think will be a pretty good crowd. I really do. I think it'll be close to a sellout, if not a sellout. But obviously the fan base is disappointed in the last 2 weeks, but they see that there's still a lot of season in front of us. This is not like the pre-playoff era where if you had 2 losses by now, your season's done. You have zero chance. There's still a little bit of hope. So keep winning week by week by week, and the fan base will continue to show up. I can promise you that much.
So again, no sleeper picks this week. We will do some picks around the country real quick, but Richie, I'll give you a 30-second break and I'll give Tallahassee Ford some love. People ask me all the time where they should go when they're in town. Tallahassee Ford has a couple of events for you just this week. You can go to the block party and they'll have a tent set up there. That's right on Madison Street in front of Madison Social. Go by and ask for one of their 1926 beers. If they have any, tell them TJ will pay for it and buy you one. So go see them there, or at the East, I think it's called the East Town Get Down, which is over at the Hub at Feather Oaks. East Town Get Down. Not quite the college scene that the College Town Block Party is, but if you're looking for something to do on Friday night, go check out one of those events. I linked it in the description. So if you're in town for the game, go see them, grab a beer on me, and tell them Double Fries No Slaw sent you. And then again, if you're looking for a tailgate, go check them out in lot 14. If you don't have something, listen, we charge you to come to tailgates. They don't. So go see them. We'll have more on Tallahassee.
And we lost TJ for a second. So, go check out Tallahassee Ford. I've not been to one of their tailgates, but I've heard they are pretty good. Definitely think that, if you would not be disappointed checking them out. It's a different speed than what you're normally used to going to, but absolutely check them out. If you're going to be in Tallahassee, Friday night, Saturday, like TJ said, though, I think it's lot 14. There's they do a phenomenal job. Like I said, I've not personally been, but I've only heard great things about the events they put on leading up to Florida State games.
I went to switch back over to the right tab and accidentally hit the X instead. And unfortunately, it's like one of those things where it doesn't say like, are you sure? Like, no, it just closes out. So thanks for taking over there for a sec. All right, let's look at some of the other games going on this weekend. UGA is a 3. Harlan, you can count these. I put them in the chat, so you can count these instead of our pick 6. A bunch of them this week. Huge slate. I'm glad we're at noon so we can just get that done, get that over with, and go.
I love noon kickoffs.
But
one of the few.
UGA is a 3.5 point favorite at Auburn.
UGA money line.
You got to pick the spread. You can't pick the money line when they're a 3.5 point favorite.
Excuse me. Yeah, UGA. They're going to hit the spread. Yeah, sorry, I read that wrong. But yeah, UGA is going to cover.
Yeah, I got UGA big in this one. Bama's a 3-point favorite at Missouri. Give me Missouri for the win. I'll take Missouri plus 3 and winning.
Nah, Bama by 2 scores.
Oof, I like it. All right, here's a big one. Ohio State is minus 14 at Illinois.
I might bet Illinois money line, but I definitely have them covering the spread.
I think Ohio State wins by 20 plus. Illinois is a fraud, and I think Ohio State.
A lot of disagreement here. I like it.
Yeah, I think Ohio State is going to try and prove that they're the better team after Miami kind of looks like they are right now. So I think they run it up. I think they beat the dog out of Illinois. So Oregon is a 7.5 point favorite against Indiana. That's in Eugene.
Yeah, if it were in at Indiana, I would take Indiana potentially money line, but with them having to go out west, I'll take Oregon to cover the spread.
Yeah, I think Oregon covers. I wish that hook wasn't there, but I will take.
I agree. Yeah.
I will take Oregon minus the 7.5. Texas is a 1.5 point favorite after their loss to Florida against Oklahoma in the Red River shootout. We still say things the right way around here. If Mateer plays in this game, actually, you know what? No, I like Oklahoma to win this game either way, even as a 1.5 dog, whether he plays or not.
Oh, man. Yeah, I think that I will definitely go with Oklahoma as well. Texas, I think you lose a game like they did last week where, they never really had a chance. Like it was kind of like Florida State Miami, right? The score looked closer than the game probably really was. And I think it is a rivalry game, so they'll get up for it, but it's always at 11 a.m. out there. I'll take Oklahoma. There's no point in it taking Oklahoma with the spread when you can get a couple more bonus points if you take them straight up. So I'm Oklahoma money line and on the spread.
Texas A&M is a 7.5 point favorite against Florida. I think they cover. I think last week was fool's gold and Texas is just trash. I think the Aggies beat them big.
What time is this game?
7:45.
I'll take UF to cover, but A&M to win.
LSU is an 8.5 point favorite against South Carolina.
Oof. And they're at home?
It is in Baton Rouge, yeah.
What time is this game? 3:30, 7:30?
I think it's night as well.
Give me LSU. They'll cover the 8.5. I always think 8.5 is such a weird spread number.
I'm taking South Carolina with the points with a small sprinkle on the upset. Okay. Just very small. I'm not predicting the upset, but it just wouldn't surprise me in this situation. Sellers versus Nussmeier. I think this is going to be a ton of fun. Again, this slate is loaded. There's a bunch of games that we didn't even put on here that we could have. And then Florida State right now on DraftKings, a 10.5 point favorite against Pittsburgh. Harlan, what you got this week? FSU wins 35-21. Dude, I thought you were going to pick Pitt or the other team the rest of the way. You're really letting me down here. Harlan's got 35-21 Noles. Richie?
I think, being a sleepy nooner, coming off back-to-back losses, you have a lot of players that have not been at Florida State for a long time. A lot of, 1-year rentals, so to speak, potentially 2 years, depending on how waivers go. I think that'll come out really sluggish. It's going to be an ugly first half. I wouldn't be surprised if they go to the half down, but I'll say 27-23 Florida State.
Woo, keeping it close. I'll take Florida State to win this. You got to start fast. I mean, not to repeat myself, but again, I'm trying to manifest a win after 2 straight L's. You got to start fast, and I don't need you to go up 17-0. That'd be great, but I need you to start a little faster than you did the last 2 weeks. You need to get a lead, and your defense needs to play up to snuff to start the thing. I'll say Florida State plays and rebounds well. I liked Harlan's score. What did you say, Harlan? 35-21?
21.
I won't go quite that high. I'll go 31-20. So they just barely cover the spread by a hook. That half point will come in clutch because I will take the Noles on the app that doesn't sponsor us. But 31-20. FSU wins. I think they find a way. The defense does just enough. Pitt's not able to do it on the road. They just haven't shown it against a quality team. I don't think Florida State's an elite team right now, but I think they're the best team they've played yet. And so when Pitt's played teams with a pulse, they've not done very well. I think that continues. They don't get over that 24 points that I think is pretty crucial. Florida State holds them under 24 minus like 4 turnovers. I'd be pretty shocked if they were to lose this game. So again, trying to speak it into existence. Any shout outs or anything, Richie, before we get out of here?
Yeah, as long as we're shouting out entities that do not sponsor us,
Oh
y'all
boy.
go watch Chad Powers. That's been a phenomenal show through 3 episodes so far. I think it's on Hulu, but the Manning brothers are like the main producers of the show. If you ever watched Eli Manning going to Penn State tryouts dressed up as a guy named Chad Powers, it's a really good show. If you're a college football fan, you will enjoy it.
I'm glad you explained what it was, because I was like, dude, are we shot on random shows that? Yeah. All right. So it's football related. So I will watch it at some point. Somebody else told me something to watch football related, and I don't know if I ever did.
It's probably that show. Yeah.
Maybe. Soccer team has a top 5 matchup tomorrow on the road at Notre Dame. So went out and saw them play Miami last weekend. I don't even know if I talked about that on
Win. Yeah.
on Sunday, just because we were all in a bad mood. But it'd be great if they could go on the road and get a top 5 win against Notre Dame. So down with the Fighting Irish there. That's all I got for today. We have Clay Fink's film review coming out tomorrow morning for the Pitt game. So if you're not subscribed already, make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss that. Again, big shout out to Guthrie's, Sleeper, and of course, Tallahassee Ford for their support on this preview. We've got more coming from all of them this month. So stay tuned. And let's go get back to 4-2. Appreciate you, Richie. Appreciate you, Harlan. Appreciate all those that tuned in and watched live. We'll talk to you soon. Love you guys. Go Noles.
Let's go.